Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com, setting the record straight about UK expert forecasts. The chief scientific advisor to the UK government predicts 50,000 new infections a day by mid-October and 200 deaths a day a couple of weeks later. Someone sent this letter to a UK newspaper. Sir Patrick Vallance, the chief scientific advisor to the government, tells us the epidemic is doubling every 7 days. Thus, he calculates, somewhat frighteningly, that we will have 50,000 new infections a day by mid-October and 200 deaths a day a couple of weeks later. Applying exactly the same method, the entire population will have had COVID-19 and 11.5 million of us will be dead before Christmas Day. Shortly after New Year's Day, all human life in the United Kingdom will have ended. So I plotted out Sir Patrick Vallance's forecast on the current daily new cases graph for the United Kingdom. The red dashed line shows his forecast. That is quite a hockey stick. His forecast is obviously absurd, and the blue line shows a much more likely trajectory. But the reality is that whatever this second wave of cases is, there's little or no correlation between it and deaths, shown in red. If there was going to be a large second spike in deaths, it would have started weeks ago, like what happened during the first spike. Back in March and April, there was a sharp rise in cases, which was very closely followed by a rise in deaths. The linkage between cases and deaths was very close back then, but now there's little or no linkage at all. Just to be clear, the red line in this graph is exaggerated along the y-axis. I did this to make the relative trends between cases and deaths more apparent. But the important takeaway from this graph is that whatever this second wave of cases is, it doesn't appear to be a particularly deadly virus. The chief scientific advisor to the government has no clue what he's talking about, but there's nothing unusual about that. 20 years ago, one of the leading climate experts in the UK government said that children just weren't going to know what snow is. And in 2004, the chief scientific advisor to the UK government said that everybody was going to have to move to Antarctica because of global warming. May 2nd, 2004, why Antarctica will soon be the only place to live, literally. Antarctica is likely to be the world's only habitable continent by the end of the century if global warming remains unchecked, the government's chief scientist, Professor Sir David King, said last week. And in 2008, there was another study in the Telegraph. Climate change study predicts refugees fleeing to Antarctica. 8 years ago, the UK Environment Secretary said that the country was in a permanent drought. And in 2004, the Pentagon told President Bush that Britain's going to be plunged into a Siberian climate by the year 2020. Nuclear conflict, mega droughts, famine, and widespread rioting will erupt across the world. They did get one thing right in this forecast. If the UK government continues its current policies, there will be widespread rioting by the end of the year. However, there's really no reason to be worried about COVID because according to experts, global warming is going to kill everyone by the end of the year anyway. 4 years to save the Earth. 2020 is the deadline to avert climate catastrophe, experts claim in chilling commentary. Governments around the world have become completely insane, and unfortunately they have the power of the police and the power of the military to back them.
What else do you want? And we need to confirm the details. What? I gave you my name. I gave you my name. Wait for it to confirm it. Okay? I haven't done anything. What have I done? What have I done?
Rowan,
Tell me what I've done.
we need to confirm your ID.
I gave you my name and address. There you
You
go.
need to wait until we confirm it.
You asked for my name and address. What?
Toto understands that this is what happens when people give up the ability to defend themselves, and that's exactly what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris want to do to the United States. Democrats, both alive and dead, are voting early and they're voting often for Joe Biden. Toto thinks it's very important for people to turn off their television and get very actively involved in this election process. If we don't, we're likely to end up being even more of a mess than the UK and Australia. You can visit Toto and Kyrie on the web at realclimatescience.com.